November 17th, 1942, North Atlantic, 320 nautical miles, southeast of Cape Farewell, Greenland. Kapitän-Leutnant Reinhard Suren gripped the periscope handles aboard U-564, his knuckles white against the cold steel as he tracked another merchant vessel through the crosshairs. His eighth kill this patrol. Suren had sunk Allied tonnage across 3 years of war, held the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, and understood the mathematics of naval warfare better than most men in the Kriegsmarine. The numbers were undeniable. Germany was winning the tonnage war. British merchant fleet losses exceeded replacements by 400,000 tons monthly. American shipyards, according to German naval intelligence estimates, could produce perhaps 2 million tons annually if they achieved maximum efficiency. U-boats were sinking 500,000 tons monthly. Simple arithmetic suggested Allied collapse within 18 months. Suren watched the freighter's silhouette through the lens. Another American-built merchant, probably 7,500 tons, unremarkable. Poorly designed by German standards, slab-sided, utilitarian, lacking the elegant lines of proper maritime architecture. He gave the firing solution to his torpedo officer, 2 eels away. Both struck amidships. The vessel broke apart in 14 minutes. What Suren didn't know, what no German submariner would understand until the war's final stages, was that the ship he'd just destroyed had been built in 42 days. That 18 identical vessels had been launched the same week. That American shipyards weren't approaching maximum efficiency. They were already exceeding it by margins German naval planners had calculated as physically impossible. The mathematics of the tonnage war, so carefully tracked in Berlin, were based on assumptions about industrial capacity that were wrong by an order of magnitude. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz's headquarters at Boulevard Suchet, Paris, housed the Kriegsmarine's U-boat command and its intelligence analysis division. Throughout late 1942, analysts compiled shipping loss reports with dramatic precision. The numbers told a clear story. September 1942, Allied losses 567,327 tons. October 1942, 619,417 tons. November 1942, 729,160 tons. The graph showed a rising curve. Fregattenkapitän Günther Hessler, Dönitz's son-in-law and chief of operations, maintained detailed charts tracking Allied merchant tonnage. His November 23, 1942 assessment, preserved in Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv Freiburg, concluded, enemy construction capacity estimated at 2.1 million tons annually, current loss rate 6.8 million tons annually. Enemy merchant fleet will reach critical depletion by August 1943. Recommend sustained U-boat operations through summer 1943 to achieve strategic victory. The assessment represented sophisticated naval intelligence work. German analysts had correctly identified major British shipyards: Harland and Wolff, Swan Hunter, Cammell Laird. They'd tracked American yards: Newport News, Bethlehem Steel, New York Shipbuilding. They'd calculated construction times based on traditional shipbuilding methodology: 300 days for a 10,000-ton freighter. They'd factored in steel allocation, skilled labor availability, slipway capacity. Every assumption was logical. Every calculation was precise. Every conclusion was catastrophically wrong. German intelligence had failed to detect the most significant industrial mobilization in human history. They'd missed 18 shipyards being built from nothing. They'd dismissed reports of welded construction as technically unfeasible for ocean-going vessels. They'd calculated that America lacked sufficient skilled shipwrights to expand production meaningfully. Their entire analytical framework couldn't comprehend what American industry was about to achieve. By November 1942, When Hessler's assessment predicted Allied merchant fleet collapse, American yards had already launched 597 Liberty ships. Production was accelerating. The catastrophic intelligence failure wasn't incompetence. It was the Wehrmacht's inability to imagine industrial organization operating at American scale. The Liberty ship originated from a crisis in British shipping capacity. By late 1940, U-boat attacks had sunk 3.9 million tons of British merchant shipping. First Lord of the Admiralty A.V. Alexander informed Parliament on November 7, 1940, that Britain required 3 million tons of new merchant shipping immediately, or face starvation and strategic defeat. Traditional shipbuilding couldn't solve the problem. British yards produced perhaps 1.2 million tons annually at maximum output. Constructing a standard freighter required 300 to 400 days from keel laying to launch. Skilled riveters were scarce. Steel was allocated primarily to warship construction. Britain turned to American industrial capacity. The British Merchant Shipbuilding Mission arrived in Washington, D.C. in December 1940, requesting 60 cargo ships immediately. The U.S. Maritime Commission, led by Rear Admiral Amory Scott Land, faced the same constraints British yards did. Traditional construction was too slow. Admiral Land assigned the problem to a team of naval architects and industrial engineers. The solution came from an unlikely source. Henry J. Kaiser had never built a ship. He'd constructed dams: Boulder Dam, Bonneville Dam, Grand Coulee Dam. Kaiser understood mass production, modular construction, and welding technology from dam construction. He partnered with Todd Shipyards, which provided maritime expertise, to propose a revolutionary approach. Welded construction instead of riveted, prefabricated sections instead of sequential assembly, assembly line methodology instead of craftsman shipbuilding. The Maritime Commission selected a British design, the tramp steamer, Ocean Class, as the template. Naval architects at Gibbs and Cox simplified it further, removing anything non-essential. The resulting vessel was 441 feet 6 inches long, displaced 14,245 tons, fully loaded, could carry 10,800 deadweight tons of cargo, and required exactly 250,000 components. The design was deliberately crude. Welded seams were thicker than necessary. Steel plates were heavier than optimal. Reciprocating steam engines were decades obsolete, but simple, reliable, and manufacturable by companies that had never built marine engines. The ship sacrificed elegance, speed, and longevity for one characteristic. It could be built by semi-skilled workers using modular construction in purpose-built yards. The Maritime Commission designated it the EC2SC1 type. Workers called them Liberty ships, after President Roosevelt's September 27, 1941 dedication speech at the first keel laying. This vessel will bring liberty to Europe. Construction began at the Todd California Shipbuilding Corporation yard in Richmond, California on April 14, 1941. The first Liberty ship, SS Patrick Henry, was launched September 27, 1941. Construction time: 165 days. Too slow. Kaiser's engineers studied every bottleneck. What German intelligence couldn't comprehend was that America wasn't merely building ships. It was industrializing shipbuilding. 18 new shipyards were constructed specifically for Liberty ship production between 1941 and 1942. These weren't traditional maritime yards, but industrial assembly facilities that happened to produce ships. The largest, Kaiser's Richmond Yard No. 2 in California, was built on marshland in 8 months, starting November 1941. The facility covered 90 acres, employed 90,000 workers at peak production, and contained 4 shipways capable of simultaneously constructing 4 vessels. Bethlehem Fairfield Shipyard in Baltimore, Maryland, built on 175 acres of filled marshland, employed 47,000 workers. Oregon Shipbuilding Corporation in Portland employed 30,000 workers across 7 shipways. California Shipbuilding Corporation in Los Angeles employed 42,000 workers. New England Shipbuilding Corporation in South Portland, Maine, employed 30,000 workers building ships 3,000 miles from the Pacific Combat Zone. The yards operated on assembly line principles borrowed from automotive manufacturing. Liberty ships were constructed in 7 major sections: bow, stern, midship deckhouse, 3 cargo hold sections, and bridge superstructure. Each section was prefabricated in specialized facilities, then transported to the shipway for final assembly. At Richmond Yard No. 2, bow sections were constructed in Building 101, a 300-foot long fabrication facility employing 2,400 workers. Stern sections came from Building 102. Engine rooms were fully assembled. Engines, boilers, pumps, piping, electrical systems in Building 105, then lifted by 120-ton cranes and lowered into the hull in one operation. This single operation replaced 3 weeks of on-ship installation work. The modular approach required extraordinary precision. Each section contained thousands of welded joints. Tolerances were measured in 1/16 of an inch across components weighing 100 tons. American steel mills provided plates cut to exact specifications. Suppliers delivered prefabricated ventilation systems, electrical panels, valve assemblies, piping sections, all designed for specific locations on specific ships. By October 1942, Richmond Yard No. 2 had systematized construction into a repeatable process. Keel laying occurred on Day 1. Bow and stern sections were attached. Day 7, 3 midship sections assembled. Days 8 through 15, engine room lowered. Day 16, superstructure attached. Day 20, interior fitting out. Days 21 through 35. Launch Day 36, final outfitting. Days 37 through 42. Sea trials. Day 43. The yard produced 1 complete Liberty ship every 42 days per shipway. With 4 shipways operating simultaneously, Richmond Yard No. 2 alone launched 1 Liberty ship every 10.5 days. Across 18 yards, American industry was producing Liberty ships faster than Germany could compile intelligence reports about them. The numbers were staggering. Liberty ship production employed 650,000 workers directly. Another 1.2 million worked for suppliers and subcontractors. The program consumed 247,000 tons of steel monthly, more than the entire monthly production of German steel mills. Electrical components required 15 million feet of wiring monthly, provided by 47 separate suppliers. Engine production alone employed 35,000 workers across 8 manufacturers who had never built marine engines before the war. German intelligence estimated American shipbuilding capacity at 2 million tons annually. By December 1942, American yards were producing Liberty ships at a rate that would deliver 8.9 million tons in 1943. The intelligence failure wasn't in details, but in comprehending the fundamental nature of American industrial organization. German analysts couldn't conceive of shipbuilding operating on automotive production principles. Their entire framework assumed traditional maritime construction methodology. The comparison was devastating. Germany launched 123 U-boats in 1942, each requiring 300,000 man-hours of skilled labor over 12 to 18 months of construction. America launched 597 Liberty ships in 1942, each requiring 550,000 man-hours of semi-skilled labor over 42 days of construction on average. German submarines required specialized facilities, skilled craftsmen, precision machinery. Liberty ships required welders trained in 6 weeks, electric cranes, and systematic organization. The first Liberty ship completed at Richmond Yard No. 2, SS Robert E. Peary, established a construction record that German intelligence dismissed as propaganda. Kiel laid November 8, 1942. Launched November 12, 1942. Delivered November 15, 1942. Total construction time: 4 days, 15 hours, 29 minutes from keel laying to delivery. The achievement represented the culmination of systematic optimization. Every component was prefabricated. Every worker knew their specific task. Every section was pre-assembled to exacting tolerances. The hull was assembled from 7 major sections in 96 hours. The Robert E. Peary entered service carrying 10,500 tons of military cargo to the Pacific Theater. German intelligence received reports about the 4-day construction time through neutral sources. Naval Intelligence Section 3, Operations, analyzed the claim in their December 18, 1942 assessment, preserved in captured documents. Reports of American vessel construction in 4 days assessed as propaganda. Physical impossibility to construct ocean-worthy vessel in such time frame. Standard construction requires minimum 200 days for vessels of this tonnage. Assessment: enemy propaganda to damage morale. Actual construction time estimated 180 to 220 days based on traditional methodology. The assessment represented logical analysis based on incorrect premises. German analysts correctly understood traditional shipbuilding and therefore completely misunderstood American industrial approach. They couldn't conceive that welding had replaced riveting, that prefabrication had replaced sequential construction, that semi-skilled workers had replaced craftsmen. Their expertise became a liability. They knew too much about how ships had always been built to imagine how ships could now be built. Liberty ships entered combat service through multiple commands. The Military Sea Transportation Service assigned vessels to troop transport. The War Shipping Administration allocated cargo capacity to the War Department. Ships sailed in convoy cycles. 10 to 14 days loading in American ports, 14 to 21 days crossing the Atlantic, 7 to 10 days unloading in Britain, 10 to 14 days return crossing. Monthly round-trip cycles delivered continuous logistics support. The vessels proved remarkably survivable. Liberty ship SS Stephen Hopkins, armed with a single 4-inch gun and 2 37mm cannon, encountered German surface raider Stier and supply ship Tannenfels on September 27, 1942 in the South Atlantic. In a 20-minute engagement, Stephen Hopkins inflicted sufficient damage to cause Stier's loss while being sunk itself. A mass-produced freighter built in 56 days had destroyed a purpose-built commerce raider. Liberty ship SS Richard Montgomery survived being torpedoed by U-256 on June 12, 1944, remaining afloat for 36 hours, allowing complete crew evacuation. The welded construction compartmentalized damage. SS Nathaniel Greene survived 3 torpedo hits from U-510 on September 13, 1942. Limped to port, was repaired in 28 days, and served until war's end. The crude cheap construction actually enhanced survivability through damage redundancy. U-boat crews encountered Liberty ships throughout 1943 with increasing frequency. Korvettenkapitän Otto Kretschmer, Germany's most successful U-boat commander with 47 ships sunk, observed in post-war debriefing at Trent Park Detention Facility. By spring 1943, we began noticing the same American ship types everywhere. Identical vessels in every convoy. We sank them steadily, but there were always more. We thought their construction capacity substantial. We didn't realize it was unlimited. The mathematics of the tonnage war shifted dramatically in early 1943. German U-boats sank 693,389 tons in April 1943, the highest monthly total of the war. The same month, American and British shipyards launched 1,264,000 tons of new shipping. For the first time in the war, construction exceeded losses by a factor of 1.8 to 1. May 1943 marked the turning point. Improved anti-submarine warfare, particularly HF/DF direction finding and airborne radar, coupled with escort carrier deployment, increased U-boat losses to 41 submarines in 31 days. Admiral Dönitz withdrew U-boats from the North Atlantic on May 24, 1943. Allied shipping losses dropped to 264,852 tons in May. American yards launched 426,000 tons of Liberty ships that month alone. German naval intelligence issued revised assessments throughout summer 1943. The June 15, 1943 estimate, captured post-war, acknowledged. Enemy merchant construction significantly exceeds previous estimates. American production now assessed at 4.5 million tons annually. Enemy merchant fleet no longer declining. Current U-boat effectiveness insufficient to achieve tonnage war victory. The revised estimate was still dramatically wrong. American shipyards produced 14.9 million deadweight tons of merchant shipping in 1943. Liberty ships represented 11.8 million tons. Of that total, 2,710 vessels launched. Peak monthly production reached 140 Liberty ships in December 1943. The 18 Liberty shipyards alone exceeded total German shipbuilding capacity, military and merchant, by a factor of 7 to 1. By late 1943, U-boat commanders recognized they faced an impossible tactical situation. Fregattenkapitän Wolfgang Luth, holder of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords and diamonds, Germany's second most decorated U-boat commander, wrote in his patrol report from UN 81's October 1943 Indian Ocean deployment. We sink 2 freighters. Intelligence reports 4 more launched same week. We damage 1 tanker. 3 identical replacements arrive next convoy. The arithmetic no longer works. We cannot sink ships faster than they construct them. Liberty ships served in every theater. SS William Clark carried 5,684 tons of ammunition to Normandy on D-Day +3. SS Jeremiah O'Brien participated in the Normandy invasion, later served in Pacific operations, and survives as a museum ship in San Francisco, one of 2 operable Liberty ships remaining. SS John W. Brown, the other surviving Liberty ship, carried 424 troops and 5,000 tons of cargo to the Philippines in January 1945. The vessel's ubiquity transformed Allied logistics. A single Liberty ship carried the equivalent of 300 railroad cars of cargo. One voyage delivered 2,840 jeeps, or 440 light tanks, or 230 million rounds of rifle ammunition. The 2,710 Liberty ships launched during the war provided 27.1 million tons of cargo capacity, enough to supply 50 infantry divisions continuously for 3 years. German forces encountered this logistics abundance everywhere. Obergefreiter Helmut Herner, captured at Anzio in May 1944, reported during interrogation, preserved in Combined Services Detailed Interrogation Center records. The Americans have everything: food, ammunition, vehicles, fuel. They waste more than we have. Our artillery rations 30 shells per day. Americans fire 30 shells every minute for hours. They don't have better weapons. They have infinite weapons. The strategic implications were decisive. Germany allocated scarce resources to U-boat construction throughout 1943 and 1944, launching 287 submarines in 1943 and 242 in 1944. These submarines required 52,000 skilled workers, 180,000 tons of steel, precision machinery, and 14 to 18 months construction time each. They sank progressively fewer ships as Allied anti-submarine warfare improved. The final exchange rate was catastrophic. Germany expended resources equivalent to 8 U-boats, counting construction, training, operations, and support infrastructure, for every Liberty ship sunk. Liberty ships were replaced in 42 days. U-boats required 18 months to replace. The reversal in German assessment followed predictable stages. September 1942. Naval intelligence estimated Allied construction at 2.1 million tons annually. Assessment: U-boat campaign, achieving strategic victory through tonnage war. March 1943. Revised estimate acknowledged Allied construction might reach 3.5 million tons annually. Assessment: U-boat campaign remains viable with increased submarine deployment. August 1943. Intelligence assessment admitted Allied construction exceeded 7 million tons annually. Assessment: tonnage war objective no longer achievable. U-boat operations to focus on disrupting logistics rather than destroying merchant fleet. January 1945. Final naval intelligence assessment, captured by British forces at Flensburg, concluded enemy merchant construction totaled approximately 19 million tons in 1944, exceeding all German estimates by factor of 4. American Liberty ship program alone produced merchant tonnage exceeding entire Axis merchant fleet construction since 1939. Strategic assessment: tonnage war was lost before it began. American industrial capacity rendered submarine campaign operationally irrelevant, regardless of tactical effectiveness. Post-war interrogations revealed the depth of German intelligence failure. Großadmiral Karl Dönitz, interviewed at Nuremberg in October 1945, stated, "We knew American industrial capacity was substantial. We calculated they might build 200 to 300 merchant ships annually if fully mobilized. We based strategy on these assumptions. When interrogators showed me the actual production figures, 2,710 Liberty ships in less than 3 years, I thought it was a typographical error. No navy in history had faced such industrial disparity. We were fighting an enemy that could replace losses faster than we could inflict them. This wasn't warfare. It was industrial mathematics." Kapitänser C. Günther Hessler, Dönitz's chief of operations, provided the most detailed post-war analysis in his 1952 study. Quote, "The U-boat war against Allied supply lines." Hessler wrote, "The fundamental error in our intelligence assessment was not incompetence, but incomprehension. We understood shipbuilding. We knew construction times, steel requirements, labor needs, facility constraints. Every calculation was correct based on traditional methodology. What we failed to grasp was that Americans had abandoned traditional methodology entirely. They weren't building ships, they were manufacturing them. The distinction seemed subtle but proved operationally decisive. Manufacturing operates at scales shipbuilding never achieves. We were fighting industrial production with military operations. The outcome was inevitable once we failed to recognize the nature of what we faced. The Liberty ship program's legacy extended far beyond World War II. The vessels demonstrated that complex systems could be mass-produced using modular construction and semi-skilled labor. Post-war commercial shipbuilding adopted welded construction as standard. Container ships and supertankers descend directly from Liberty ship construction methodology. Modern shipbuilding in Korea, Japan, and China uses assembly line techniques and prefabrication pioneered at Richmond and Baltimore. The program proved that democratic industrial systems could outproduce authoritarian command economies, despite apparent inefficiencies. Germany's centralized planning, skilled craftsmen, and precision engineering produced submarines of remarkable quality and too few to matter. America's chaotic, distributed, mass production approach produced ships of adequate quality in world-changing quantities. Victory went not to the better craftsmen, but to the better system. Of 2,710 Liberty ships built, 200 were sunk by enemy action, a 7.4% loss rate. Another 1,400 were sold for commercial service post-war, many operating into the 1960s. The vessels delivered 75% of all cargo shipped overseas during the war. Without Liberty ships, the Normandy invasion would have been impossible, the Mediterranean campaign unsustainable, the Pacific island hopping strategy logistically unfeasible. Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Suren, the U-boat commander who sank his 8th merchant vessel in November 1942, survived the war. In a 1982 interview, he reflected, "I sank 17 merchant ships during the war. I thought I was winning. Each sinking felt like victory. What I didn't know was that on the day I sank my first ship, America had already launched 40 identical replacements. On the day I sank my last ship, they'd launched 2,200 more. I wasn't fighting the British Royal Navy or the U.S. Navy. I was fighting American industrial capacity. We never had a chance. The war was decided in shipyards in California and Maryland, not in the Atlantic. We just didn't know it yet." The Liberty ship program represented American industrial warfare at its most comprehensive: massive scale, distributed production, modular design, semi-skilled labor, systematic organization, and ruthless efficiency. German submariners fought bravely, skillfully, and ultimately futilely against an enemy that could lose the tonnage war's daily battles while winning its industrial foundation. The mathematics were inexorable. America built faster than Germany could sink. By the time German intelligence understood this reality, 2,000 Liberty ships were already at sea. The tonnage war was over. Germany had simply failed to recognize its defeat until the evidence became undeniable. Identical American freighters in every ocean, delivering infinite logistics, proving that in industrial warfare, production capacity determines victory more surely than tactical brilliance ever could.